Hi, ladies. I'm Sue Kramer, and I want to talk to you today about how to find peace in the midst of stress and overwhelm. Not just peace, but freedom too. Okay, so we're going to tear this up a little bit and talk about this. Let me ask you a question. How do you see yourself? How do you show up? And then let me ask you, how do you want to show up? I'm hoping that as we open this up a little bit and explore these things, you will start to see overwhelm a little differently because it's not about your to-do list. It's about your to-be list. All right. First thing we're going to talk about is mindset. And I want to tell you a story about a woman that I met at a conference years ago. She was tense and uncomfortable. And of course, being the YouTube body language expert that I am, because I learned it all at the school of YouTube, I could sense her uneasiness. Really, anybody could. You didn't have to be an expert. And given her appearance, I wondered, like, where is this coming from? She was stunning in appearance, physically fit, and seemed very put together. But her movements were filled with insecurity. Her head was bowed low, her shoulders were kind of hunched and kind of squeezing in her neck, kind of talking to me, looking up. And I had no idea why she was so uncomfortable or even, just nervous. Like we were just talking. It was very casual. Well, none of it made sense until I learned later about her story. And she had recently lost over 100 pounds. I had no idea, and I couldn't tell from looking at her. But once I learned about her incredible weight loss, I realized why she was so insecure. Though she was beautiful and darling on the outside, on the inside, she still saw herself as the largest woman in the room who never fit in. And it didn't matter what the mirror reflected. Her mindset was stuck on her past, and she expected others to respond to her the way they once did, with disapproval and rejection. So that's how she showed up. Okay. The way we see ourselves and the person we believe we are is how we will present ourselves. It's how we will show up in the world. If you see yourself as broken, unashamed, unforgiven, ugly, overweight, worthless, etc., it'll show up that way. You'll show up that way. Okay? You'll present that. You'll project who you are based on what you believe about yourself. Basically, you get stuck in that mindset. You have expectations of disapproval and of rejection. And so that's how you show up. If you see yourself that way, others are going to start to believe that about you because they're just going to believe that you're insecure, that you're not strong, that you're uncomfortable. It's going to be seen, it's going to be felt. All right. And that is fully based on our mindset. Where is our mind? How do we see each other? How do we show up? What do I believe about myself? Mindset is foundational to who you show up as. The world around you will respond to you based on who you believe you are and present yourself to be. And guess what? They already are. Let me emphasize, I'm not saying you should fake it. I'm here to help you believe differently and then show up differently. All right. Let's look at another aspect of overwhelm that you may not have thought about, and that is people pleasing. Number 2 is people pleasing. When a person feels a strong urge to please others, even at their own expense, we call that being a people pleaser. I have a lot of experience in this. It's a tendency to prioritize others' needs and wants over our own. People pleasers may have difficulty saying no. We're going to circle back to that in a little bit. People pleasers may agree to things they don't want or can't do. They may apologize a lot or take fault when they aren't at fault. They go along with something that they don't agree with because they want to keep others happy. They often neglect their own needs. They struggle with saying no, like I said earlier, and we are going to circle back to that. People pleasers, as a result of being a people pleaser, we often spend our lives looking for validation from others. All right. Now, where does this come in? People pleasing usually starts at a very young age. As children, we're taught to listen and obey. And when we do, we are rewarded with affection and praise. And this teaches us to comply with what others want, to go with the flow and not disrupt the needs of others. Now, this doesn't mean our parents were necessarily doing anything wrong. Often our parents are just busy, all right? But if the approval and affections were regularly tied to performance and compliance, we quickly learned as children how to be loved and how to behave differently. Now, I'm going to stop you right there, ladies. I want you today, as I'm sharing this, I want your focus to be on you and not on yourself as a mother. I want you to think of it as you as a daughter, all right? As a child, you're the little girl on the inside we're talking about. You can later process the parenting side, but it's really important that we get this side of who we are processed first, okay? People pleasing can be harmful because it can lead to feelings of resentment, anxiety, stress, and feeling emotionally depleted. And it's also linked to feelings of depression. And I want you to think about that. What is depression? What does the word depression even mean? If you think about it, the root is depress, to push something down. And if we are people pleasers, we are constantly pushing down who we are, what we want, what our needs are, what our desires are. We're pushing that down to take care of everyone else and to fulfill what they are. And we're doing it with a motive of getting our own cup full because we want to please them so we feel accepted. Okay. It's very hard to form authentic relationships if you're a people pleaser, because technically you're not being authentic. You're not being who you are. You're being who you think they want you to be. All right. I think about when we're little kids and we say, another aspect of this is like we're little kids and we say, you're not the boss of me, you know? Well, let's just touch on that. If someone is your boss, technically you are to do what they need you to do. They give you a job, a service, you provide it, they pay you. That is different than people pleasing. That is transactional. That is, I am doing something for you and being paid for it. It's a transaction. Now, again, this is something that can play into other relationships too. It's very healthy and right when you have a boss employer situation. But if you're in a relationship with someone, recognize that if it feels transactional, probably not authentic. And you need to pay attention to that. Okay. So when we are people pleasing, when we do this, we're not sharing life with those around us. We're performing to get their approval and performing to avoid rejection and performing to be accepted and performing to be loved. Not a healthy basis for a relationship, okay? But it may be something we grew up with, something you were very used to and you did. Now, let's come back to that saying no. In some cases, and often due to early childhood trauma, you could fall into a behavior called fawning, and you have a very hard time saying no. You may have heard about the threat responses fight, flight, or freeze. We're all pretty familiar with an animal that either fights, flights, runs, or freezes to avoid a predator. All right, so it's also a trauma response. But the fourth one that we don't hear about often is called fawning. And I just learned about this years, it's been years now. I've been studying it for quite a while to understand it because I think I spent most of my childhood fawning. And it was not healthy. It's not a healthy response. It goes deeper than simply people pleasing because it becomes part of our identity, part of who we are. And here's how. When we fear that we will be rejected or abandoned if we don't do all that they want us to do and be the person they want us to be, we respond by fawning, by never saying no to people. And that causes us to disconnect from our own needs and our own emotions. And eventually we lose ourselves. We lose our sense of autonomy, of self-governance, and ultimately we lose our freedom because we're not who God even created us to be. Now, this is not the same as laying down our lives for each other in a sacrificial love. Fawning is about doing it to gain their love and approval. Jesus taught us to give because we love. Jesus gave to us because he loved us. That's unconditional love. But fawning and people pleasing is you're doing it to get love. Okay? There's a big difference there. Yes, you're giving, but your goal is to get approval in return, to get love in return. Whereas healthy giving and healthy love has boundaries that say no as an act of love towards that little girl inside of us that needs to be herself. I know that's a lot. I just gave you a lot. If you need to pause and go back and hear that again, please do. I know I will. I know it's a message I've over and over and over talked to myself about and tried to learn about, because it says a lot right there. That little girl inside us wants to be herself, but for so long she's just stuffed herself down because she learned very young that to be accepted was to do everything that everyone wanted and to get their approval by behaving, being the good girl. So remember, no, number one, is a complete sentence. Number one, no is a complete sentence. No. Someone asks you something? No. You don't have to say more, but you can if you want. The point is to stick to your no. And no is a word that should never be negotiated. Because if someone is choosing not to hear your no, then they're trying to control you. And you need to think about that. What's going on here? You need to pay attention to that. If someone will not take no for an answer, trying to control you. So pay attention to that. And I heard another saying, and I can't think of who said it, and I apologize if someone ever hears this and I didn't quote you correctly, but it was, say what you mean what you say, and don't say it mean. I love that part because I'm not mean. Like at the core of me, I'm not mean. And so there's sometimes you feel like I need to stand up for myself. Well, you can say what you mean mean what you say, but you don't have to say it mean. And that's okay. All right, the third thing I want to talk about, we've talked about mindset, we've talked about people pleasing. Now let's talk about comparison. Often our performance mentality is rooted in comparison. So what are some of the ways we compare ourselves with other women? I can hear you. You're saying how we dress, our shape, our size, our body physique, our parenting skills, how their child behaves, how mine doesn't behave. I compare myself. They're honor roll, mine's not, or vice versa. Success, wealth, size of our house, car we have, all these things that we can compare. And now I have to add into this whole message, doing it years later than when I used to, likes, followers, hearts, getting responses on social media. We compare how many people responded to her. What did they say? You know, what were they? And do I have more? Do I have less? And all of a sudden we feel better than or less than. Neither of them are healthy. When we spend our days worrying about how to fit in, we become a chameleon and we change and to blend in with the crowd that we're with or want to be with. It's not authentic and we feel it, and our heart doesn't like being inauthentic. So it's a stressful place. It builds stress. All these things that we're talking about build stress and overwhelm. Okay. Eventually, what we'll do is we'll forfeit our true self for a sense of belonging. And this is why eventually we end up with a crisis of identity, asking ourselves, who am I? Who even am I? I've been what they wanted for so long, or I've changed who I am to try to fit in and be accepted. I don't even know who I am anymore. I want you to know who you are because you are pretty amazing and pretty special. You were uniquely created for the glory of God. You have something to bring to the family of God, the community that God has put you in. You are a piece to a puzzle that won't be complete without you and who you truly are, your authentic self. Comparison keeps us from having peace and causes us to lose sight of who we are. Ephesians 4:7 says, He has given each one of us a special gift through the generosity of Christ. Paul is saying, you're unique. Own it. Be that woman. It's time to grasp your individual gifts and be the woman God's calling you to be, and not the woman around you, not the women in your neighborhood, in your church, wherever it is, at the school. You're not called to be them. You're called to be you. Every one of us is called to different things, and those things may change as our seasons in life change also. You will show up differently as a new mom than you do as an empty nester. Life's experiences will make sure of that. So, where are you right now? What's important is that you recognize that this season is the most important season to focus on right now. I get it. You feel like you're spinning your wheels. If you're a young mom or a stay-at-home mom, or even a working mom, whatever your identity is, or you're not a mom at all, you are a woman who is just, you feel like I'm going nowhere. I'm doing nothing important. I'm doing laundry and cooking and cleaning and whatever. That's not true. This season is important to you and your family right now. Don't compare what she's doing. That's not your journey. Your journey is your journey. Don't worry about what she's doing. If you try to live what she's doing, it's going to cripple you. You were never meant to live her life. You have no qualifications to live her life. But you are the best person to live your life for your family. You are their best mama. You are the right one for that job today. A lot of this, putting this together, I was specifically talking with moms. So a lot of this is mom focused, but that doesn't mean if you are not a mom, if you are not raising kids right now, God has a calling on your life for something different than for this season. Don't wait for the next season to come alive. This season. And we can't talk about comparison without touching on social media and what I call doom scrolling, a lot of people call. Because we look on social media and we're like, look at her life. Her feed is filled with filtered pictures taken in just the right light with the perfect angle. She's laughing and happy. Her husband and kids look thrilled to be with her. She's baking pies, and yet somehow she looks like she lost weight. And oh, look, she got a new car and she's on vacation again. That's kind of how doom scrolling goes, right? Now, I don't know about you, but after I get online and I start seeing a lot of these things, in the past, my thoughts in that moment have not been, oh, I'm so content right now. I'm so happy that I haven't gone on vacation in 5 years. And I'm just thrilled that my kids didn't make honor roll. In fact, one of my kids got in really big trouble this year. Whatever the case may be, that's where I am. I'm not like thinking, oh, this is great. I'm happy for her. At least I didn't used to be. I've come a ways, come a long ways, that now I can celebrate other women. But it took some time. It took some time of going through and figuring out, why did that bother me? Why am I comparing myself? And I'm 57 now. And so I've had some years to figure out that, you know what? Comparison is empty. And I'm still always going to struggle because I'm still alive, but it's empty, it's fleeting, and it depresses who you are because you start looking, comparing yourself. Do I measure up? Do I not? Am I better? And then being better then isn't any better for us. It's still not healthy. It is clinically proven to increase stress if you turn to your social media when you want comfort. It's not a place for comfort any more than, as you know, if you've been around me long enough, you know that I am very much opposed to eating a lot of highly processed foods. It's the same thing. Like, that's because often we turn to that for comfort. And so it's the same thing, whether it's doom scrolling or food or alcohol or shopping, whatever that is that we turn to, that is we're trying to get comfort from, that isn't from knowing who we are as a daughter of the God who created us. Anything we turn to besides him and that comfort from him is going to be empty. It's going to be fleeting. We're going to be stressed. We're going to feel overwhelmed because it's inauthentic. It's not who we are. I call it a rabbit hole of comparison. We start down it and we just keep going. It takes the life out of us. Our gratitude is gone and our worth is thrown out the window. Ladies, you were made for more than this. You truly were, I promise you. You were created by God to be content with being the object of his love and then loving the world around you as that flows out of you. Living in that love, to know that love, to live there, knowing that you are loved and accepted, and it's not performance based. 2 Corinthians also talks more about comparing ourselves and says that it's not wise. 2 Corinthians 10:12, if you want to look that up. But there is a verse that gives us a key to stop comparing. And I love this verse. It's Hebrews 13:5. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. I believe the most important word in that verse is because. Listen again. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. This says to me, I'm here. What more could you need? I am enough. We become discontented when we focus and dwell on what we perceive to be lacking in our life. It's the ultimate case of FOMO, fear of missing out. The ultimate case. Comparison just spirals it down that rabbit hole. He is the ultimate fulfillment of all we need. He wants us to be satisfied with him more than anything else and to see ourselves as the beautiful woman that he created us to be, with gifts and callings that he placed in you as a gift. Don't get caught in the comparison trap. Don't get caught there. When God looks at you, he sees a daughter he truly loves. He dearly loves, struggling to become something she was never meant to be, grasping at fulfillment in all kinds of things besides him. A famous poet once said, sometimes it is necessary to teach a thing its loveliness. Ladies, you are lovely. You are beautiful. Your love, your kindness, the comfort you offer, the nourishing you provide, the inspiration you can bring to everyone you come in contact with. That's beautiful. And that's beauty that draws people to the heart of God. I believe the enemy of our souls works nonstop at persuading us to give up on our beauty and retreat into a life of insecurity, to give up on our authenticity, to give up on who we are, and to live in a life of insecurity, desperately wanting approval from others. Let me tell you a little story from many years ago. Most of you know that our youngest daughter, Lauren, was adopted from China when she was 26 months old. And she was born with a cleft palate and lip that were repaired by the time we got her home, although she had several more surgeries to continue the repair and to really refine the work that they needed to do with her mouth. But one day back when she was probably 8 or 9, Lauren had a half day of school. And so we went to the grocery store and then to Pizza Hut to redeem her Book It coupon. Maybe you remember Book It was that program that if they read enough books, they got this coupon for a free personal pan pizza. And so that was burning a hole in her pocket. And she was sorely disappointed when she realized that all she was going to get was a pizza, because I think she thought there was going to be balloons and pony rides, or at least a prize from which she could pick a Super Ball or a necklace or something like that. But nope, just a pizza. So we were there. But that's not the heartbreaking part. At least it wasn't for me. As we sat there and talked, she complained about her swollen lip. She had fallen off a sled and bumped her mouth a few days before, and her lip was red and swollen, and that it was because of the scar, it was more pronounced than usual. And so she was really self-conscious about it, constantly checking it in the window and looking at my phone and trying to see if the swelling had gone down. And I assured her that it would go away and that it looked just fine and it was not a big deal. And the swelling would go down by the time she went back to school. And it just didn't satisfy her. She was very upset by this. And I mentioned to her, I'm like, but Lauren, it's just because it's right on that scar that it looks worse than it was. And so it made it look like it was a worse injury and it was going to be fine. Well, the minute I said that it was on the scar there, I just saw the life drain from her sweet little brown almond shaped eyes. Her head just dropped. She sunk out of the booth, crawled into mine, and just fell into my lap crying. She said, Mommy, why does my lip look like this? Tears streaming down her face. And with every mommy bone in me aching, I answered, honey, you were born with a cleft lip and the doctor fixed it, but it left a little mark. But I promise you, over the years, it's going to fade. It's going to go away. And she just, in despair, just, no one else in my school looks like me, she said. No one. She just, it was so sad. It was just heartbreaking. And I held her tight and I kissed every inch of her I could. And she calmed down as I told her about how beautiful she was and how special God had made her, and that she was, also the only one in her class that came all the way from China to live here, and just really tried to lift her up. And I wanted so bad to comfort her and take all that pain away. But we can only do so much in that moment. And I want you, just like I wanted to comfort her, just like I wanted to make her feel better, I want you ladies to think about the fact that right now, the way you feel about how you want to comfort Lauren is how God feels about us. I wanted to convince her of her beauty and her worth. And that's exactly how God feels towards you. He wants you to understand that his love towards you and has nothing to do with all the outside stuff. You were created because God saw that the world needed your beauty, your unique beauty. And only you can bring that to the world. But you can only bring it if you're authentic, if you stop trying to be something you're not. So let's bring this all back to our main topic. Are you feeling overwhelmed? Could it be that the reason for the overwhelm is that you've put a burden on yourself, a burden that you were never meant to carry? Imagine a giant backpack loaded down, keeping you hunched over and unable to show up as the woman God created you to be. And then when you start feeling this comparison and people pleasing, it's like more being packed into that. And you just, like that woman I described earlier, you're kind of hunched over and you're insecure and you're sad and you're overwhelmed and you're stressed. And that fear of missing out and that insecurity and anxiety and the fear of saying no and saying I'm sorry till you're blue in the face, practically apologizing for taking up space in the world. When that happens, I want you to get curious and ask yourself, why am I afraid? Why is this getting to me? What's my mindset? Am I people pleasing? Am I in a people pleasing rabbit hole right now, spiraling down in comparison? And then remember that contentment is tied to knowing He is with you and will never leave you ever. And let that stress and overwhelm lift off you so you can have peace and freedom to live as the woman He called you to be. And I want to finish with one verse I want to read to you out loud. And it is from the Message Bible. If you followed me at all, you know this is one of my favorites. Romans 12. So here's what I want you to do. God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life. You're sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you, always dragging you down to its level of immaturity. God brings out the best in you, He develops well-formed maturity in you. Let's choose peace and freedom over stress and overwhelm. And let's find that little girl who was stuffed down for so long and start bringing her out and saying, what does she need? What does she want? And that's not selfish. That's taking care of yourself. And that is from as you begin to become the woman God created you to become, you'll be a better mom and sister and daughter and friend and employee and all those things. And you'll start to become who you were created to be. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know. Send me a note. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great day.